So really our final step in getting that Lightbox behavior is to follow those last few steps for implementation. This is a very easy library to work with and to get up and running. So returning to the documentation, we're actually going to initialize it with HTML. We have the libraries loaded and linked appropriately, so now we get to take advantage of them. So what we need to do in this case is add a data Lightbox attribute to any image link to enable the Lightbox. So for the value of the attribute, use a unique name for each image. And there's an example below. So what this example actually is an A tag. Our thumbnails in this case are going to become the content of that A tag because we want our thumbnail to be clickable in order to enlarge the larger version of that same image. So we have an A tag, we have the data Lightbox attribute that it outlines with a unique name, as it says here, a title, which can be basically just a caption for the image, and then the content of the A tag is whatever is going to be clickable. So for instance, they have text in here, for example, but we're actually going to put an image as the content of the A tag. So once again, it's great to get started pulling over kind of the skeleton code for these types of things. We're just going to have to adjust it to make it work for our application. So I'm going to do the same thing. Going to copy this over, and let's just work with our first thumbnail. And I'm going to go ahead and separate this here. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that. And first thing we're going to do is actually remove the text here, and I'm going to put this closing A tag below our actual thumbnail image. So I'm going to encapsulate our thumbnail image within the A tag. Now, next step, we actually want to correct the path here. So you can see the correct source for this image is within the assets folder, then within the thumbnails folder within that. Well, these larger images are actually located in the images folder, and then the corresponding number goes along with the corresponding thumbnail. So if we were to correct this, all we would have to do is say assets/images, and it's going to say image 1, no dash in this case. And then for our data Lightbox attribute, we can make it the same. Let's just go ahead and why don't we just actually say image 1, keep it the same name as the image, and we'll work on correcting the captions later. So let's go see how this actually works. We're going to open up our code again in the browser, or just refresh it if you're already there. So a little bit of styling you can see got added there. And clicking on our first image now should actually bring up that larger version of it and put that Lightbox effect on the back. Awesome. So there we have it. That's basically all we need to go ahead and implement that Lightbox behavior. So now let's do it for the 5 remaining images. Returning back to our code, we're basically going to have to create an A tag like this around each image in order to make it a clickable link. So bear with me, or actually you should be doing this along with me as well. Okay. So now our next step is actually just correcting the path for each image. So we're going to want to correct this to be the corresponding number of the thumbnail that it's attached to. So we can just go ahead and change out each number here so it makes sense. Awesome. So let's go ahead and check that out now. Opening it in the browser again. Let's go ahead and refresh this page. So now each image here should be clickable. Awesome. So we more or less have the behavior that we want. We saw in the example earlier that I showed you that we were able to use the arrow keys to scroll through the images of the photo album. And that's actually not working at the moment. So let's go ahead and return to the documentation for a second. And so we were told before that the data lightbox actually needs a unique name for each image. But down below, you can see that if you have a group of related images that you would like to combine in a set, we can give the same value for the data lightbox attribute, and that'll kind of create a collection out of those images. So let's return to our code, and I'm just going to give it the name of this collection. In this case, is going to be road trip. And if I give each one of these lightbox attributes a value of road trip, this should create a collection. So now we should be able to use the arrow keys to actually scroll through these. And that was successful. So our last step here might just be to make these captions a little bit more interesting than my caption. So all I'm going to do is copy and paste the alt tag over, and that'll be the caption that's actually shown below the enlarged image when the lightbox is up. But you can make these captions anything that you find more interesting than what's in this alt tag here. Awesome. So that's pretty much all we need to do to get Lightbox implemented. So returning back to the documentation, while it's really easy to get up and running, there are some ways to actually customize Lightbox. This is its default behavior, its default state, but we could actually work to implement some other options. So if we scroll down below in this area called Options, it lists out some default options here that we can actually adjust. So this is helpful, and all we're actually going to do is include this lightbox.option in a script tag in the bottom of our HTML body. And then we have all of these options listed here. So I'll do an example, but I would encourage you to play around working with some different Lightbox options that it provides. It also provides the default value as well as a description of the type of value which it supports. So in this case, why don't we work with this position from top here? Taking a look at our images now, we can see that they're fairly close to the top. So why don't we make them a little bit more in the center of the page? So the default option is 50 pixels. So let's go ahead and increase that. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this example over once again. And then here, let's go ahead and just adjust this spacing. So here, I was going to use the position from top attribute. I can go ahead and nix this wraparound. And since the default is 50 pixels, why don't we actually, that 200 was good. Why don't we actually give it the 200 now and see the difference? So returning back to the documentation, position from top, yep, that's correct. And then now we should see our images. Once I refresh this and click on another image, we should see that it's further down. Awesome. So a little bit more centered now. So now you know the power of working with these libraries and frameworks, how easy it is to get a more complex behavior up and running really quickly. So now that we know how to work with that, we're going to actually work on writing our own jQuery code to create our custom behavior. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in Project 2.